Welcome back to research methods in English literature. We will continue from the slide that we stopped the last time on conducting a literature review. The literature review is both a foundational research skill and, in some cases, a research method itself by surveying and synthesizing existing scholarship. You establish context for your work and identify gaps in knowledge and position your contributions within ongoing academic conversations. A strong literature review demonstrates your command of the field and justifies your research approach. Purposeful, I mean purpose and types of literature reviews, systematic reviews use explicit, replicable protocols to identify, evaluate, and synthesize all relevant research on a topic. They define clear research strategies, inclusion, exclusion, criteria, and the quality assessment procedure. While more common in sciences, systematic reviews, and literary studies might survey all um, scholarship on a particular author in a specific journal or time period using constant evaluation criteria. Now let's go to narrative reviews. Narrative or traditional reviews offer more interpretive synthesis of scholarship, identifying themes, debates, and evolution of thought in a field. These reviews tell a story about what scholars have discovered, what remains controversial, and where new research is needed. Most literature reviews in literary studies follow this narrative approach, balancing comprehensiveness with critical synthesis. Scoping reviews Scoping reviews map the landscape of research on broad topics, identifying types of evidence available and the gaps in research coverage. They're explanatory, helping researchers understand the scope and the nature of literature in emerging or interdisciplinary areas. Scoping reviews are useful when planning more focused research projects. Now let's go to strategies for searching and managing sources. Search strategies identify key database, GSTOR, Project MUSE, MLA, International Biography. Develop search terms combining concepts with Boolean operators and or not. Use subject headings and controlled vocabulary. Follow citation trails from key articles. Set up alerts for your new publications. Search across multiple sources and formats. Managing citations, use citation management software, Zotero and Notes, and then Mendeley. Create consistent organizational systems for sources. Take detailed notes with precise page references, tag sources by theme, methodology, or relevance. Maintain working biography from project start. Back up your citation library regularly. Um, Critical appraisal and synthesis. Read strategically. Start with abstract and conclusions to determine relevance. Read introductions carefully to understand arguments and approaches. Skim for key concepts and defines before deep reading. Organize thematically. Group sources by theme, methodology, or theoretical approach rather than simply listening chronologically or alphabetically. This reveals patterns and facilities synthesis. Identify gaps and note that what hasn't been studied, where the representatives are missing, and what questions remain unanswered. These gaps justify your research and suggest opportunities for original contribution. Write clearly, balance summary with analysis, attribute ideas precisely to author, use clear topic sentences, create transitions showing relationships between sources, conclude by positioning your research. Now let's go to avoiding common pitfalls. Plagiarism always cites sources even when paraphrasing bias includes sources with different perspectives, not just do supporting your views. Superficial summaries move beyond description to critical engagement, lack of focus, and show every source contribution or contributes to your specific research. Question outdated sources, balance classic works with recent scholarship. Ethical tools and techniques. Once you've designed your research project and reviewed relevant literature, you need analytical tools to examine your primary text systematically and generate insights. These techniques from the call of literature analysis, enabling you to move from observation to interpretation and argument. Mastering multiple ethical approaches gives you flexibility to address diverse research questions. Now let's move to close reading, the foundation. Close reading is detailed, careful analysis of textual elements, word choice, measure, syntax, rhythm, structure, and the tune to understand how a text creates meaning and produces effects. This method assumes that form and content are inseparable. How something is expressed shapes what it means. Close reading requires slow, attentive engagement with language, noticing patterns, tensions, and ambiguities that reveal complexity. Practical close reading by selecting short passages for intensive analysis. Ask what words carry particular significance, how does syntax shape meaning, what patterns of imagery emerge, what sounds and rhythms are created, how do formal features relate to thematic concerns. Close reading generates the external and textual evidence that supports interpretive arguments. Comparative analysis finding patterns. Comparative analysis examines the similarities and differences between texts, authors, genres, or cultural contexts to reveal patterns and generate insights invisible from studying single texts. Com- Comparison might be synchronic, comparing contemporary texts, or diachronic, tracing changes over time. It might examine formal features, thematic concerns, or cultural contexts. Effective comparison goes beyond nothing or noting similarities and differences to ask why these patterns exist and what they reveal. For example, comparing how Victorian and contemporary novels represent urban space might reveal changing attitudes toward modernity, technology, and the social organization. Comparison works best when texts share enough common ground to make differences meaningful. Thematic and contextual analysis. Thematic analysis identifies and examines recurring themes, the motifs, and ideas across texts or within single works. This approach reveals what concerns preoccupy authors, periods, or cultures. Contextual analysis links texts to historical, social, political, biographical, or cultural contexts, exploring how literature reflects responds to and shapes its world. Historical contextualization might explore how World War First, for example, shaped modernist experimentation. Social context might examine how class structures influence Victorian novels. Political context might investigate how literature responds to colonialism or civil rights movements. Biographical context might consider how authorial experiences in forms themes. Context shouldn't be treated as simple background. Literature actively engages with the transformation its context is. Now let's go for combining analytical approaches. Sophisticated analysis often combines multiple techniques. You might use close reading to analyze specific passages, comparative analysis to identify patterns across texts, and contextual analysis to explain those patterns historically or culturally. Theoretical frameworks guide how you apply these tools. Feminist might use close reading to examine, generate representations, then contextualize findings within patriarchal social structures. Now let's go for textual evidence. All literary analysis requires textual evidence, specific quotations, examples, and references that support claims. Code precisely integrate quotations smoothly into your prose. Explain how evidence supports arguments. Do not assume significance is obvious. Balance quotation with analysis. Spend more words analyzing than quoting. Now let's go for interpretive flexibility. Remember that literary texts support multiple valid interpretations. Uh, your analysis should your analysis should acknowledge complexity and ambiguity while making persuasive arguments. Consider alternative readings and explain why your interpretation is compelling. Nuanced analysis recognizes that great literature resists simple reduction to single meanings. Case study applying research methods to a literary text. Abstract methodological discussions become clearer through concrete examples. Let's examine two case studies demonstrating how methods choice affects research processes and the findings. These examples illustrate the practical application of research methods and show how different approaches illuminate different aspects of literary texts. Case study one, using archival research to trace manuscript evolution. Research question: how did F. Scott Fitzgerald's editorial revisions transform The Great Gatsby between drafts, and what do these changes reveal about his artistic development and response to editorial feedback? Data collection research travels to archive photographs, manuscripts, pages, transcribes, the draft passages, and documents, changes across versions, examines letters discussing editorial decisions. Method selection. Archival research examining manuscript drafts, typescripts, and correspondence with editor Maxwell Perkins held a Princeton University literary close reading comparing draft passages with published texts. Analysis and the findings. Analysis reveals Fitzgerald substantially revised next character to make him more morally ambiguous, strengthened symbolic imagery, and tightened prose. Based on Perkins' suggestion, findings eliminate collaborative nature of literary production. Now let's go for the next slide, talking about that this archival approach reveals dimensions of the text invisible in published versions. By examining the writing process, we understand authorial intentions, editorial influence, and artistic decision making. However, this method requires access to uh, archive and expertise in manuscript analysis. The resulting insights contribute to textual scholarship and literary biography. Case study 2, discourse analysis of racial representation in contemporary poetry. Research question: how do contemporary African American poets use language to challenge dominant racial discourse and construct alternative representations of Black identity, particularly in post-civil rights movement poetry? Method selection, critical discourse analysis, examining linguistic strategies, rhetorical devices, and ideological implications in poems by Claudia Rankine, Dennis Smith, and Tracy K. Smith. Theoretical framework combines critical race theory with discourse analysis. Text selection and analysis. Reader selects representative poems addressing race, identity, and social justice. Analysis examines vocabulary choices, reclaiming slurs, code switching, grammatical structures, fragmentation, reflecting trauma, metaphors, the body as site of racial or violence, and inter intertextual references to history and protest movements. Findings and interpretation. Research reveals poets strategically disrupt conventional language patterns to challenge racist assumptions embedded in discourse. Fragmentation and the non-standards grammar resist linguistic colonization. Direct address implicates readers in systems of operation. Poems create counter narratives asserting Black humanity and dignity implications. Study demonstrates how poetry performs political work through language, not just content. Finding contribute to understanding literature's role in social justice movements and eliminate connections between linguistic innovations and ideological resistances. Comparing approaches, notice how these case studies use different methods suited to differentiate questions or archival research reveals historical process and authorial intention. Discourse analysis examines ideological work of language. The first focuses on individual authors and texts. The second examines the patterns across multiple poets. Each approach has strengths and limitations. The method choice depends on what you want to discover. These examples demonstrate that research methods isn't an arbitrary choice, but a strategic decision aligned with research questions, theoretical frameworks, and desired insights. Strong research justifies methodological choices and acknowledges what different approaches reveal and conceal. Integration theory and the method. Literary theory and research methods aren't separate domains, they work together to shape how you approach text. Formulate questions, gather evidence, and conduct arguments. Understanding this integrating helps you design coherent research projects where methodology, theory, and the methods align to produce meaningful insights. Let's explore how different theoretical perspectives inform methodological choices. Now let's go for how literary theories inform research questions. Your theoretical perspective determines what you look for in texts and what questions seem important. Marxist critics ask about class economics, relations, and ideology. Feminist scholars examine gender, power, and representation. Postcolonial theorists investigate empire, identity, and cultural hybridity. Eco-critics explore nature, environment, and sustainability. Theory provides the lens focusing attention on particular textual features and contextual relationships. Marxist critic and economic contexts. Marxist literary criticism examines how text reflects, reproduce, or resist economic structures and class relations. A Marxist approach to Dickens' Hard Times might investigate how the novel represents industrial capitalism, class conflict, and worker exploitation. Research questions explore ideology, how to exist, naturalize, or challenge power, relations, commodity, culture, labor, and economic determinism. Methods, close reading of economic imagery and class representations, historical contextualization of industrial conditions, discourse analysis of ideology, comparative analysis of bourgeoisies and working class perspectives in literature. Now let's move to feminist theory and gender analysis. Feminist criticism examines gender construction, representation, and power relations in literature. Feminist research might explore female authorship, um, and the literary tradition, representations of women in male authorized texts, or how literature challenges or reinforces patriarchal ideologies. Recent feminist work intersects with critical race theory and the queer theory to examine multiple intersecting identity categories, methods, close reading of gender representation and power dynamics, archival research on women's writing and publishing, discourse analysis of gendered language reception studies examining how different readers respond to gendered texts, comparative analysis, cross genders, and historical periods. Now let's move to postcolonial analysis and cultural identity. Postcolonial theory investigates literature's relationship to colonialism, imperialism, and their after effects. Research explores how literature represents colonized peoples, how colonial discourse operates, how post-colonial writers write back to empire, and how identities form in colonial and post-colonial contexts. This approach examines power, representations, and cultural hybridity. Methods, discourse analysis of colonial representations and Orientalist troops, comparative analysis of colonial and post-colonial texts, historical contextualization of imperial history, close reading of linguistic hybridity, and code switching, examining or examination of resistance literature and counter narratives. Balancing theory-driven and data-driven approaches, theory-driven research, theory-driven or deductive research begins with theoretical frameworks and tests or applies them to texts. You might start with feminists or feminist theories, concepts of the male gaze, and examine how contemporary films enact or subvert this dynamic. Theory provides concepts, vocabulary, and the hypothesis to test. Strengths, clear framework, sophisticated conceptual tools, connection to broader debates, risks, forcing texts to fit theory, missing unexpected insights, confirmation bias. Now let's go to research, data-driven or inductive research. Start with close observation of texts, allowing patterns and insights to emerge before applying theoretical frameworks. You might notice recurring patterns in a poet's imagery before identifying them as eco-critical concerns. They enter later to examine and contextualize findings, strengths, openness to surprise, attention to textual specificity, grounded conclusions. Risks, lack of direction, reinventing wheel, missing broader theoretical significance. Most sophisticated research combines both approaches in an iterative or iterative process. You might start with theoretical interests, examine text closely, refine theoretical concepts based on contextual evidence, then return to texts with refined framework. This dialectical movement between theory and text produces most persuasive research that is both theoretically informed and textually grounded. Practical integration, theory and methods by first articulating your theoretical assumptions explicitly, showing how theory shapes your research questions and analytical focus, selecting methods appropriate to theoretical approach, using theoretical concepts to interpret findings, contributing back to theoretical debates with textual insights. Theory isn't decoration, is integral to research, design, and interpretation. Presenting literary research findings. Research isn't complete until you communicate findings effective to audiences, whether presenting at conferences, defending fees, or teaching. You must translate complex analysis into clear, engaging communication. Effective presentation balances scholarly pressure with accessibility, uses visual elements strategically, and adapts to audience needs and contexts. Structuring a research presentation introduction, hook audience with compelling question or example. State your research questions and its significance. Review your argument and structure. Establish context. What conversation are you joining? Methodology. Explain your research design. What method did you use and why? Describe your sample. Why text and why these? Briefly address a theoretical framework. Keep this concise but clear. Findings, present your analysis and discoveries, organizing by them or argument, not chronologically. Use specific textual examples and evidence. Show how evidence supports claims. This is typically the longest section. Discussion conclusion. Interpret significance of findings connected to broader theoretical or critical debates. Acknowledge limitations, suggest implication and future research, end with strong concluding statement. Using visual effectively. Visual elements enhance presentation when used strategically and not decoratively. They should clarify complex ideas, provide evidence, or create emphasis, never distract or confuse. In literary research, effective visuals include text excerpts display key quotations for close reading, highlight specific words or phrases, show draft changes in manuscript studies, use formatting to emphasize patterns, keep text large and legible, archival images, show manuscripts pages Book covers or historical documents provide visual evidence of material texts, illustrate publishing history, connect texts to historical contexts, always cite sources. Thematic diagrams map relations between concepts, illustrate narrative structure or timeline, show patterns across texts, visualize theoretical frameworks, keep diagrams simple and clear. Design principles use consistent fonts and colors, avoids cluttered slides, lids, and more. Ensure text is large enough to read. Use high contrast colors for visibility, balance text and white space. Now let's go for the last slide today. Delivery tips, practice timing, respect time limits, make eye contact with audience, speak clearly and not too quickly, explain jargon and technical terms, and show enthusiasm for your research. Audience adaptation, academic emphasize theory and methodology, general focus on accessibility and examples, mixed balance rigor and clarity, anticipate questions and prepare responses, be ready to clarify or expand on points. Communicating complex ideas clearly. Literary research often involves sophisticated theoretical concepts and nuanced interpretations. Communicate complexity without oversimplification by using concrete examples, illustrate abstract concepts with specific textual instances, defining key terms, explain theoretical vocabulary without assuming knowledge, building incrementally, introduce simpler ideas before complex arguments, using analogies, connect unfamiliar concepts to familiar experiences, signposting, use clear transitions and structural markers to guide audience. Remember that your goal is communication, not displaying expertise. The most impressive presentations make complex ideas accessible while maintaining intellectual rigor. Engage audiences by showing why your research matters, not just what you discovered. So thank you so much for watching me teaching you research methods, and we'll continue inshallah the last and the final session tomorrow. Until tomorrow, ta for now.